Well, it's great to be back in Texas, to be back in Corpus Christi. I've been looking forward to it, and we're going to be doing a new series for television here. This you'll get it first. We're filming this for television and radio on a topic that I have in one way or another spoken about for many years. Those of you who know me have heard me speak about this topic in various ways. The title of the little series is The Battle for Truth. And indeed, it is a battle. We are at war, St. Paul said. But our battle is not against flesh and blood. Yes, there is a war in Iraq, in Afghanistan. We've had many wars throughout history. But this war is the war to end all wars. It's the spiritual war that is the definitive battle. This is the one that counts. You don't want to lose this one. Because at the end, when the battle's over, and the smoke is cleared away, and time gives way to eternity, the very simple fact, the truth, is that you and I are going to be one of two things: a winner or a loser, heaven or hell. Now that's very simple, straightforward, in-your-face truth. And it's with that. Well, you know, I was preaching in Ohio last weekend, and I stayed with a friend of mine there for the weekend, and he said he's figured out that you can really boil it down to one question to see where people are in life. Heaven, hell. What do you think about that? You know, do they believe in eternal life, a heaven or a hell? I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about concerning this battle. And the battle is raging in our own lifetime, the battle for truth. You can find it out in the secular order. You'll find it in the media, of course. You find it in politics. You find it everywhere. And you also find it in the church. For the last many, many years, you have found this battle right in the middle of the church. It used to be that there really wasn't that kind of a battle inside the city of God. If you can imagine it as kind of a fort, you know, the old Western movies where they had the fort, and the good guys were inside the fort, and the battle would take place, and the Indians would be shooting and surrounded and so forth. And inside the wire, as we say in the military, inside the wire, in the camp, where you have a certain amount of safety. That's the church. But the enemy has broken through the wall in many places in recent years. Part of the problem that we have in this battle is that far too many people are oblivious to the reality of this war. They don't know there's a battle going on. Can you imagine if you were a soldier in World War I, II, Vietnam, Iraq, whatever, and you're in the war zone and you don't think there's a war? You know, you say, oh, there's no war, there's no battle. It's nice here in Iraq in the streets of Baghdad. There's no battle going on. I think I'll leave my weapon at home and take a nice stroll. I mean, you can say that about some of the big cities in this country. You wouldn't even do that in New York City or Los Angeles. That's a war zone too, in a different kind of a way. Let me read to you from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, a sure norm for teaching the faith. And I know you all have a copy of it. Everybody here has a copy of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. No Catholic today should be without it. It is a great gift for the church. In one little place, you have everything the Catholic Church teaches in faith and morals. No excuse not to know your faith today. And it is very important to know our faith. We have been negligent in the last few decades in many cases, about teaching the faith and about learning the faith. I blame most of the problems in the world on us. On us. Why? Because we have failed to learn it and live it. Because if we would learn it and live it with intensity, this country would be very different. And because of that, the world would be very different. This country has a profound effect on the rest of the world. Catholics have fallen down on the job, and the world has suffered because of it. Did you know that the average Catholic doesn't even go to Mass on Sunday? In North America, 80% of Catholics don't go to Mass on Sunday and holy days of obligation. 80%. That means only 20% are going on average. Now that is a precept. You have to do that. That's just a bare bones beginning of practicing your faith. The average Catholic does not know their faith. I used to give a quiz every place I went. And the average grade was 43%. And that's a failing grade. And people just didn't know. Well, let me read this to you. This dramatic situation of the whole world, which is in the power of the evil one, this makes man's life a battle. The whole of man's history has been the story of dour combat with the powers of evil. Now that's a statement from the church. The whole of man's history has been the story of dour combat with the forces of evil. And anyone who has lived a little bit knows that it is a battle. There is a battle for truth. You have to start, I think, by asking, well, what is the truth? You remember what happened during the Passion of Christ when Jesus was brought before Pontius Pilate, and he said, I have come to bear witness to the truth. And Pilate, that prototype of every spineless politician who says, well, I personally believe it, but wouldn't want to impose my beliefs on anyone. You know, there's even some so-called Catholic politicians who take positions like that. They promote abortion and partial birth abortion, and that is unconscionable. You can't do that. You can't do that. In case anybody here is confused on that, let me unconfuse you. You can't be pro-choice and Catholic. You can't. That is impossible. Ain't happening. Can't do it. So there's a battle for the truth, and you might say, well, what is the truth? Very simple teaching. Jesus himself gives it to us. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus Christ is the truth. God himself equals the truth. That's the point of departure. That's where you have to start. The truth is not something. The truth is somebody. And his name is Jesus Christ. That's where you have to start. You've got to understand that. And so we begin there. Now, when you study your faith, when I first taught my Catechism series, which I entitled The Teaching of Jesus Christ, I told the people, enter into this not like a dry academic exercise. Enter into this like you're getting to know the one you love. Right now, if the first commandment is to love the Lord your God with your whole heart, mind, and strength, that's what Jesus said. And then the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. How can you love God with your whole heart, mind, and strength if you don't want to know God? You know, if you're in love with someone, you want to know everything about them. You know, you married folks, remember, now think way back there. You know how it was. And I know for many of you, it still is that way, thank God. But you wanted to know everything about your future spouse. You are interested in this person. It is inconceivable that you could love somebody truly with your whole heart, mind, and strength and not care to know anything about them. That's disinterest. You can't be disinterested in someone if you're going to love them with your whole heart, mind, and strength. And so that's the way it is with learning your faith. The sum and substance of the truth, our faith, is Jesus Christ. And to know him is to love him. And so you want to know all about Jesus. That's what this is about. It's not about a dry exercise in academics. It's about coming to know what God is really like, what our Heavenly Father is like, what Jesus Christ, the Son whom he sent, what he's like. So the truth is Jesus. Now, in the fullness of time, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to deliver from the law those who were subject to it. That's Galatians 4:4. So in the fullness of time, Jesus entered time and space. He came, of course, to save us, and along the way, he taught us. You might ask the question, what did Jesus teach us? And someone would say, he taught us the truth. Yes, he did. He taught us himself. He taught us himself. God teaches us himself. The sum and substance of our faith, faith and morals, equals God. And you can't know the Father except through the Son. If you want to know the Father, you have to study the Son. Okay? You want to know the mysterious nature of God, you have to look at Jesus, who is true God. If you want to know your own mysterious human nature, once again, you have to look at Jesus, who's not only true God, but true man. And so that's the truth. That's where the battle line is drawn. Now, we have this battle raging everywhere, in politics, in the social order, in the educational establishment. But where the battle is most intense is in the church. We got to get it right inside the house if we're going to get it right outside. You see, let me give you an example. For 20 plus years, there was a man, and I never mention names. I never do. I don't do that, and I never will. I don't believe in attacking people, even if they deserve it. But I don't do that. I won't ever mention names. But this is true. Now, there was a man on the West Coast who had a doctorate degree. He wasn't a priest. He happened to be a layman. He had a doctorate degree in religious education. And he formed most of the directors of religious education and catechists all up and down the West Coast for over 20 years. This man was given a lecture in California a few years back, and there was an elderly lady there who had gone through my program on the Catechism. I've got a bunch of these ladies and men who went through my Catechism program, and the way I look at it is, it's like, man, I'm training SWAT teams. SWAT teams. You know SWAT. You know what SWAT means? Yeah, spiritual weapons and tactics. Yeah. Well, that lady was about 80 years old, and she sat and listened to this guy talk, and it prompted her to ask him at the end, Dr. So-and-so, do you believe in angels? Oh, no. Angels are just a literary device used in Scripture to illustrate certain points. Well, do you believe in the devil? No, the devil is just medieval nonsense. That's just, once again, a literary device used to illustrate the concept of evil. Well, do you believe in purgatory? No, of course not. That involves some suffering, and God could never have that because He's so good. Well, do you believe in hell? No, of course not. There's no hell. There can be no hell. God is good. God is love. He could have no hell. Well, do you believe in life after death? And he said, honest to goodness, I'm not quite sure. That is the man who was in charge of forming large numbers of directors of religious education and catechists all up and down the West Coast. And a couple years after that, he went to the East Coast, and I saw a billboard in a Catholic school where I was preaching with his name on it, advertising that he was teaching seminars in religious education on the East Coast. Now, if you have any common sense, and I know you do, you have to scratch your head and say, what? How is that possible? How could that have happened? And I'll tell you, it's not that unusual. Now, that being the case, is it any wonder we've had problems? No, it isn't any wonder at all. It's as predictable as morning following night. Had to happen. You can't put people like that. I wouldn't let him teach. I wouldn't let him anywhere near a Catholic institution. And yet, this has happened. Now, I got good news for you. It's getting better and better and better. We've got wonderful seminarians and priests that are coming up. There are many good priests already there, but I'll tell you, it is a battle. The battle for truth. The first time I ever preached, I'm going to recycle an old joke for you here. True story. I have to keep recycling. I don't have that many. And some of you have heard my joke so many times. But this is true, and it always fits. It always seems to fit when I'm talking about this concept and reality of spiritual warfare. The first time I ever preached to a big audience was right after I finished my doctoral studies in Spain. I came home after earning my doctorate, and I was at my mother's house in upstate New York. And the telephone rang, and it was someone from a big conference like this, and a speaker had gotten sick or something, and they needed a speaker to fill in. Now, in those days, I was totally unknown. Nobody knew who I was. I hadn't spoken any place, but somehow they'd gotten wind of it. There was a new priest, you know, freshly minted, ordained by the Pope, just got a doctorate degree, you know, and so let's invite him, because he probably doesn't have anything to do, which was almost true. So there I went, and there was another speaker. This one was a priest, not the same one in the first story I told you. This was a priest, and he gave a keynote address. And by golly, he said, oh, there's no such thing as angels, and there's no such thing as the devil, and there's no such thing as purgatory, and there's no such thing as hell. And an old lady in the front row whispered to her friend, man, I wish one of them literary devices, remember he called angels a literary device? That's a technical term from Scripture. Well, I wish one of them there literary devices come down and kick his butt. That was her profound theological commentary on the matter. Finally, he finished, went down, wouldn't you know it, he sat right next to the old girl. And she couldn't hardly stand it. I witnessed the whole thing. It was like, it was truly like a cartoon. She was trying to be good. You could tell she was trying to, you know, be charitable, but you know, she had reached that age where she just didn't care. Some of y'all there, right? Me too. Yeah. Well, finally she couldn't stand any longer, leaned over and whispered in his ear, Father, you don't believe in hell? He said, oh, no, of course not. He said, well, you believe it when you get there. She had more theology than he did. I'll guarantee you. See, this is what I'm talking about. Some of these guys have been educated into imbecility. They don't have a clue. They don't know which way is up. Now, that old girl didn't have any formal education in theology, but she was like my grandmother. She had good common sense, and she knew the faith in its basics, and you weren't going to talk her out of it. No slippery-tongued devil of a theologian was going to talk her out of the basic truths of the faith. But there's a battle, a terrible battle for truth. If we don't get it right inside the church, how are we going to give what we do not have? And so this is extremely important. I've been talking about this, preaching about this, teaching about this. Some of you were there with me from the very beginning, and you know it. You've heard me years ago. You know, back in 1993 was probably in Florida. So it's so important. And I'll tell you, it's not been without effect. Pope John Paul II, for almost 27 years, fought that battle for truth, and not without profound effect. He did a tremendous job of hanging on to things. We came through an age of relativism. I can't give you all the philosophical and theological underpinnings of it in the short time we have, but suffice it to say that we passed through an era of subjectivism. In other words, we passed through an era where people had the mistaken notion, even highly educated people, that they could make it up as they went along. In other words, that because we're smarter today, more sophisticated today, more educated today, that we can change the truth to fit our circumstances. Now, let me tell you something about the nature of the truth. God equals truth. We already said that. The truth is God. All truth that truly is subsists in him who is the truth. St. Thomas Aquinas said that. All truth subsists in God. God, by definition, is unchangeable, immutable. Now, why is God unchangeable? Because he's perfect. God isn't on the way. God is eternally arrived. God is perfect, immutable, unchangeable. So the truth in its substance is unchangeable because the truth is rooted in God. Now, our experience, you might say, doesn't really indicate that, because when we look at everything, we say everything is changing. Everything's in flux. You know, the universe is changing. We change. And that's very true. No argument. I agree with you. Everything in creation does change. But the Creator does not change. Now there's where the difference is. Created things, yes, they're subject to change. But the Creator is not subject to change. See, we're on the way. He is eternally arrived. He's perfect, we are not. We change, He does not. The sum and substance of the truth does not change. I assure you, there will never be 9 commandments. There will always be 10 commandments. I assure you that all the defined teachings of the church will not change. Now, it's possible our understanding of those unchangeable truths can change, certainly. Our understanding can get better or worse. But that which we understand, the truth in itself, that doesn't change. That's solid. That's a rock. That's a rock. Your faith is built on a rock. Jesus Christ is the rock. Your faith is built on that rock, and that rock isn't going anyplace. The shifting sands of time, the mere whims and fancies and personal opinions of this theologian and that theologian, that's so much sand that'll be blown away by time. But the truth itself, that's a solid rock, and it's not going to change. That's what our faith is built upon. And so don't ever get nervous or worried. I remember when I was a young student, a novice, and a seminarian, I used to get so upset by some of the things we would see in the church, some of the errors. And even though I hadn't yet earned a doctorate in theology yet, I knew through a simple sense of the faith, like you do, the basics. And if somebody said to me, there's no such thing really as an angel. And by the way, this happened one time in a conference that we sat through in a religious organization. A man who was a psychologist came in and said, well, angels aren't really real. And I remember I raised holy hell in plain English. What are you talking about there on an angel? Of course there's angels. That's a doctrine of the faith. Don't be telling me there's no angels. There are angels. I'll tell you what, I'm alive because there's angels. Man, I got a guardian angel who's big. I'd have been dead meat a long time ago without that guy. Guardian angels are real. The angels are real. Heaven, hell, all that stuff you know. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. All the basics of the faith, that can't change, okay? Now, certain things develop in theology. Now, who is in charge of judging or arbitrating, determining how things should proceed in theology, the things that we teach in theology? Is it like a democratic vote of theologians? Oh, no. Listen, is it perhaps a Gallup poll? Oh, no. No, no. Let me say something real clear here. Listen very carefully. Jesus Christ never intended that eternal truth be determined by a democratic vote. It is what it is, what it is. Period, exclamation point, that's it. That's the truth. You know, there have been certain doctrines of the faith, certain moral teachings that have come under attack over the last few decades. The teaching on the indissolubility of marriage, about the unitive and procreative dimensions of marriage having to go together, about the intrinsic evil of such things as artificial contraception, abortion, euthanasia, same-sex sex. Can you imagine if my grandmother had read some of the headlines that we have today? Man, she wouldn't have believed it. I could just hear it reading the newspaper. When she was 93, she got lens implants. And she had like 2010 vision. I mean, she could read fine print in the dark. And she read a lot then. That was like giving her, she got new eyes, basically. And so she read everything. But can you just imagine, she's reading the paper today and said, oh, I can just hear her. I can just hear Grandma. Johnny, what does it mean, debate on same-sex marriage? I say, Grandma, don't even start. You know, things like that. You know, look what has happened to us just in my lifetime, 50-some years. You know, I was born in 1947. Just look what's happened since then to now. I guess you could kind of evaluate it by what's on television. You know, think back to the early 50s, those of you who are old enough to do that. And there looks like there's plenty of you. Just like me. But you remember back in the 50s, television, you know, things like Milton Berle, Bob Hope, Archbishop Fulton Sheen. Yeah. You know, that was on national television, that kind of thing. It was wholesome. It was pure. There wasn't any pornography on television back in 1954, I want to assure you. If anyone had put that forward in polite society, they'd have locked them up and thrown away the key. Now, do you think we didn't have freedom back in the 50s? Yes, we did. As a matter of fact, we were much more free back then than we are now. Because you see, what's happened is people are now guilty of temporary insanity. Temporary insanity. I'm telling you, history will judge this generation as having been temporarily insane. Believe you me, under the specious pretext of freedom, we've exchanged the truth of God for a lie. It's not freedom, folks, it's license. There's a radical and essential difference between freedom and license. License is doing whatever you want to do. Right? And so even the poor, pitiful Supreme Court can't get that right. They couldn't really do much with child pornography on the internet. Please. You have to be out of your ever-loving mind. Oh, freedom. That's not freedom, you moron. Wake up. That is license. Get a brain. I'm going to tell you something. Too many of us have been asleep for too long. You know, we've just been in this moral slumber and we let it happen. Why? Because the vast majority of Catholics weren't living their faith, weren't even going to church, hence not in a state of grace. Hence, you don't have the light to see. Hence, you can't hear. You're blind and you're deaf. And you don't speak in defense of the truth. You're blind, you're deaf, and you're dumb. And so it just happened then. It just happened. You know, think back on it. You know, you think back, oh, Madeleine Murray O'Hare, she said, well, we can't have no prayer. I don't want no prayer in schools. No prayer in school. You know, separation of church and state. Boy, I'll tell you, I can say this down in Texas here. That's happy horse manure. That's not separating the church and state. Man, read what the founding fathers said. I have read it many times over. They didn't want, remember where they came from, England. Remember they had one church, the Church of England, right? That was it. You had to be a member of that. You got persecuted. What they wanted to avoid in this new country, this new government, that no state-sponsored religion, no one religion. They wanted to leave people free. That's too personal a thing. How you worship God is your business. They didn't want to impose a state religion on people. That's number one. And number two, they wanted to keep the state out of the affairs of religion. Those two basic things. It did not have anything to do with evicting God from society. It was a God-fearing society that began this country. The founding fathers were Christian and wanted Christian principles. How do you think it ever got on our money, "In God we trust"? They put it there. God bless America and all that. We were a country that believed in God, was founded upon Christian principle. And what's happened in recent years? Some upstart thinkers taking the truth and perverting it, subverting it, and distorting it, have turned it into a lie. No. The truth is, this was a Christian country when it was founded, and that was the intent. But we didn't impose Christianity on other people. We left them free to worship God as they please. And that's the way it should be. All people should be free to worship God as they please. But you cannot expunge God from society and claim to be living out what the founding fathers wanted. And so Madalyn Murray O'Hair said, "Oh, keep God out of the schools." And then we wonder why our children are killing each other, their teachers, and themselves at an unprecedented rate. And then Dr. Spock came along and he said, "Well, now look, you don't want to discipline your children, see. You could warp their little personalities." Man, I'll warp their backside. You know, you got to have some common sense. But you know what we do? We said, "Oh, he must be an expert, so okie dokie." You know, we let it go. And then someone said, "Oh, well, you know, it's a free country." And not enough people were thinking or awake, and they got confused. It's a free country, and see, the implicit meaning they gave to freedom was being able to do whatever you want to do. In other words, under the specious pretext of freedom, they said, well, freedom of expression. You know, if you want to print Playboy or worse, or make pornography, we got to let them do it, because after all, that's freedom of expression. No, sir, that's not freedom. That's not freedom. That's license. You say, "Yeah, but freedom, I can do whatever I want to do." If I could do whatever I wanted to do, I'd whip out my Dirty Harry 44 Magnum and start shooting. And you say, "No, you can't do that." Well, of course I can't do that. Freedom has limits, right? Freedom has limits. We can't do whatever we want to do. So that underlying premise that freedom is the ability to do whatever we want to do, that is fallacious. That is a false premise. But we bought it hook, line, and sinker. They say, "Oh, okay, yeah, freedom of expression. Go ahead, let's print pornography." Do you know what the word pornography literally means? It comes from two Greek words: pornoroi, graphia. Pornography. Pornoroi, the devil. Graphia, pictures. Literal translation of pornography, the devil's pictures. That's what it means. Y'all mess with the devil, he's a cruel master. And that can be a slavery worse than heroin. And there are people addicted to it up one side of this country and down the other. It's destroying families. It is eating away the fabric of the dignity of human beings. And we go, "Oh, it's legal. Oh, that's freedom." That is not freedom. That's where the battle for truth is, right there. You've got to know where the lines are. There's truth and there are lies. Jesus said, the devil, now by the way, when I preach, I assume certain things. Now I realize that you have to be careful with that, because you have to be careful what you assume. But I have to assume that y'all are basically Catholics and Christians who believe the basic tenets of Christianity and Catholicism. I don't have time to teach every small point as I go along. But I'll tell you what, if I gave this lecture in a large number of Catholic institutions, they'd laugh me right off this stage. Why? They don't know the faith at all. They would say, oh, the devil, yeah, right. You know, like, the devil made me do it. You know, they don't believe. No. The devil's a real being, fallen angel, perverse and perverting, and there are millions with him in his army. This is a real battle between the forces of good and the forces of evil. You know, every once in a while, some, so-called educated person will want to argue with me on this. Theologian, a priest, even a bishop. They can't win. They can't win. Don't tell me there's no devil. Don't tell me. Listen, this is basic stuff. Bishop Sheen got it right when he assessed what was happening to the church and society. He said, if God is the one who says I am who am, then Satan is the one who says I am who am not. If he can get you to believe he doesn't exist, imagine, if the enemy could get you to believe that he doesn't exist. You know, if the insurgents in Iraq could somehow through propaganda get us to believe they don't exist. Why fight? There's no enemy. Eat, drink, and be merry. No enemy, hence no war. And that's what's going on. The vast majority of people refuse to acknowledge reality. Who teaches the truth? The church teaches the truth. How do you know what is true? Jesus gave us the church. Remember what happened in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16. What the truth is in faith and morals. Listen to the church, the magisterium, the Pope, and the bishops who are united to him in teaching the same truth yesterday, today, and forever. Letter to the Hebrews says, Jesus Christ, the truth, the doctrine of the faith, what we believe, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Therefore, do not be carried away by all kinds of strange teaching. The basics of our faith are the same. Now, don't say, yeah, but once upon a time we couldn't eat meat on Friday, and now we can. So it changed. Nope. That's a mere discipline. That's not doctrine. That's discipline. You know, doctrine, it concerns the substance of the faith. The creed, the 10 commandments, prayer, and so forth. I've been saying for about 20 years now, I'm going to write a book entitled Where the Lines Are. That's a great title, Where the Lines Are. In other words, the line that subscribes Catholic faith. In other words, I have to stay in certain lines. There are boundaries. You can't just do anything and be Catholic. Our faith is a creedal faith. When I say, I believe, or we say, we believe in one God, I don't believe just any old thing. I believe a well-defined body of doctrine in faith and morals. How do I know what that is? The church gives it to me. In the last few decades, there has been a horrendous apostasy from truth. Many who should have known better, teachers of the faith, wandered off to fables, nonsense. You know, I've heard all kinds of things. People come to me. I've preached in 49 states, okay? Hawaii is the only one I haven't preached in. I've been invited. I guess I'm just too guilty to go there, though. You know, go there and preach is too nice, you know. But I'll go there one day. But I've seen the church. I've been in many foreign countries. Unbelievable things. People tell me, oh, Father told me I don't really have to go to the church on Sunday if I don't find it relevant. relevant? You know, if I told y'all, you don't need to eat anymore, I'm giving you a dispensation from eating, don't eat anymore, you don't really need to do that. You'd say he's out of his mind, and you'd be right. Hey, we wouldn't think of depriving our bodies of nutrition. Wouldn't you give your soul at least one good meal a week? You got to go to church on Sunday. That's very, very simple. Why? Why? Because you need it. You get sanctifying grace from the sacraments. And without sanctifying grace, you can't be united with God. Sanctifying grace, a short definition, is a share in divine life. Okay? So many things, so important. Marriage, okay? The teaching on marriage. Gosh, some of them just went goofy. Teaching on all the sacraments, on the Eucharist. Some of them don't believe Jesus is really there. They took a poll of Catholics, supposedly, Gallup poll, and said, do you believe that Jesus Christ is truly present in the Holy Eucharist? More than half of Catholics, like 68%, said no. It's just a sign. I've talked to priests who don't believe it. Oh, if you ask them and nail them down, they'll lie. And say, oh yeah, I believe. But if you talk to them privately, like I have sometimes, no. They have Protestant theology. Nothing wrong with Protestant religion for Protestant folks. I highly respect them. Some of them live Christianity better than a lot of us do. And I have nothing but high regard for them. But for a Catholic, we have to believe what the church believes. Marriage. Once you're validly married, okay? Catholics get married. You get married in the church. Valid marriage. It's indissoluble. What God has joined together, let no man rend asunder. Human sexuality. The teaching is clear and it hasn't changed. Marriage between a man and a woman. It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. I mean, that's very, very clear. What am I going to say, you know? And you know, you get called all kind of names. It's politically incorrect. You know, today to talk about these things, we're politically incorrecting ourselves right into hell. It's like one of my Baptist preacher friends said, man, you know, it's always if, and, or but. But this and but that. It seems to me like we're going to hell on our butts. A lot of this teaching has to be clarified. You can't be afraid to do it. You know, some of these things will get you killed. I remember one time I was down in the country of Belize preaching, and the the layman I was with, I had to develop a very rough exterior years ago. It's like that one dear old lady said to me one day. She said, Father, she said, boy, you know, I've listened to you for a long time. I love your Catechism series. Thank you for trying to teach us the truth. And after watching you all these years, God revealed to me your greatest gift. And I said, He did? And I'm thinking to myself, she's going to be nice, you know. And she says, and it ain't preaching. I said, oh. Well, what is it then? And she said, well, your greatest gift, Father. And she was like one of these real sweet little old ladies, you know, nice soft voice and looked like your grandmother, you know. And, oh, well, Father, you see, God revealed to me that you don't give a fat rat's who likes it and who doesn't like it. And I said, amen, honey. God bless you.